In our headlines on this Tuesday, June 23rd, here in South Korea, the U.S. is briefly suspending its sanctions on Iranian oil and says Iran will reopen its doors to UN nuclear inspectors. But Iran says no nuclear inspections have been agreed upon. Meanwhile, here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung calls for extensions in fuel price caps and fuel tax cuts amid conflicting narratives over peace efforts between the U.S. and Iran. Also, Samsung's latest high-bandwidth memory chips are believed to have become the first in the industry to surpass $1 billion in sales just 4 months after their launch. The Trump administration is suspending its sanctions on Iranian oil and says Iran has agreed to reopen its doors to UN nuclear inspectors. Iran, for its part, has denied the latter statement. Our Chung Hae-rim has the latest.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance says the latest round of talks with Iran laid the foundation for a possible final agreement, speaking to reporters in Switzerland on Monday.
But look, the fundamental thing we got is, number one, we set up the mechanism to ensure not only the Straits of Hormuz are open, but will stay open. Number two, we actually set up the right mechanism to ensure the regional ceasefire to manage the inevitable conflicts that will come up. We have the Iranians allowing weapons inspectors, nuclear inspectors into their country for the first time in a long time.
Vance said that Tehran has officially agreed to readmit International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, inspectors into the country. However, Tehran pushed back on those claims. Iran Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai said Tehran's cooperation with the IAEA would continue only under the existing framework. On the economic side of the agreement, the U.S. Treasury has issued a temporary 60-day waiver allowing Iran to sell and deliver oil without sanctions. U.S. President Donald Trump also said any Iranian assets unfrozen under the deal should be used to buy food and other agricultural products from the United States.
If Iran doesn't live up to their agreement, or if they're not behaving, I will do what I have to do.
But the details of those arrangements remain unclear, with technical teams expected to continue negotiations in Switzerland this week. Chung Hae-rim, Arirang News.
Here in South Korea, President Lee Jae-myung has called on his cabinet members to keep their guards up amid conflicting narratives by the U.S. and Iran as they seek to hammer out a tangible peace framework. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yu-jin reports.
With the United States and Iran yet to reach a final agreement to end the war, President Lee Jae-myung has once again urged his cabinet to stay on high alert.
끝까지 긴장의 끈을 놓지 말고 비상체제를 유지하고 민생 경제 회복에 박차를 가해 주시기 바랍니다.
Chairing a cabinet meeting on Tuesday, Lee proposed extending the government's fuel price caps and fuel tax cuts, citing high oil prices and inflationary pressure. Korea introduced price ceilings on petroleum products in March for the first time in 3 decades. Fuel tax cuts remain in place through July, with the tax cut set at 15% for gasoline and 25% for diesel.
반도체나 이런 데 초과 세수들이 좀 예상이 되고 그러면 유류세를 좀 낮춰도 재정 부담은 그렇게 크지는 않고 그러면 좀 더 과감하게 석유 최고 가격제는 더 유지하고 좀 최고 가격도 좀 낮춰가야 될 거 아니에요?
Refiners are currently prohibited from selling gasoline above 1,934 won per liter, roughly $1.26, and diesel above 1,923 won, or $1.25. Looking beyond the immediate crisis, Lee said the war in the Middle East has exposed structural vulnerabilities in Korea's economy.
에너지와 원자재 공급망의 전략적인 다변화, 그리고 재생에너지 중심의 에너지 믹스, 탈플라스틱 순환경제로의 이행을 서둘러야겠습니다.
The Foreign Ministry says it will strengthen supply chain cooperation with resource-rich regions outside the Middle East, such as Latin America and Central Asia. Meanwhile, the Finance, Industry, and Climate Ministries are reviewing measures to accelerate investment in solar power, wind energy, batteries, and electric vehicles. The president called on officials to work with greater precision, speed, and initiative to turn these goals into reality. He reiterated that the way public officials carry out their duties directly affects the lives of the people. 송유진, Arirang News.
In other news now, sales of Samsung's latest high-bandwidth memory chips reportedly soared past $1 billion just 4 months after their launch earlier this year. Our EG uncovers these prospects.
Semiconductor industry insiders say Samsung Electronics' 6th-generation high-bandwidth memory chip, also known as the HBM4, has become the first in the industry to exceed $1 billion in sales. If measured as of the end of June, sales are expected to exceed $1.2 billion. The achievement comes about 4 months after Samsung Electronics became the first company in the world to begin mass production of HBM4 chips. The HBM4 offers approximately 2.7 times higher data transmission capability compared to the previous generation, the HBM3E, driven by increased bandwidth. It also has a data processing speed of 11.7 gigabytes per second, about 1.2 times faster than the previous generation, helping to alleviate data bottlenecks that become more severe as AI models grow in size. Along with higher performance, it also improved power efficiency by around 40% compared to the previous generation.
NVIDIA has been the biggest user of HBM chips so far. With Samsung Electronics introducing an improved product, the company has now been able to supply its HBM chips to NVIDIA, which is directly contributing to its sales growth.
Experts say Samsung Electronics' strong HBM4 sales are largely driven by expanding investment in AI infrastructure. According to a Bloomberg intelligence report, the HBM chip market is expected to continue expanding to $130 billion by 2033, driven by the rapid growth of AI computing as workloads continue to scale.
HBM is a key component used in AI accelerator systems. As the AI industry continues to expand, demand for HBM and the size of the market are expected to grow accordingly.
Industry insiders predict that Samsung Electronics' HBM4 sales are expected to exceed $10 billion this year. If this is the case, this would mark an unprecedented level of first-year revenue for a new memory product. Lee Ju-yeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the local bourse lost tremendous ground on this Tuesday amid rampant profit-taking by foreign and institutional investors. The benchmark KOSPI closed at 8,203.8, down 9.9% from the previous session. A sell-side sidecar was triggered in the morning, followed by a circuit breaker after the index sank over 8% about an hour before the closing bell. The secondary KOSDAQ also witnessed a sell-side sidecar before ending down trade at 7.9%. The Culture Ministry has announced the launch of a public-private intellectual property fund to boost the country's video game industry. The fund, worth 120 billion Korean won, or some $78 million that is, will support game developers from their early stages to their growth into global IPs. Under the current agreement, the ministry will allocate around $39 million, while video game developer Nexon will set aside roughly $38 million, and investment firm Kona Venture Partners will earmark $780,000. The fund will focus on games with high potential for global expansion, including narrative-driven IPs. North Korea has reaffirmed its commitment to its nuclear arsenal and has ramped up its tough talk against South Korea. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung reports.
North Korea has once again reaffirmed its commitment to expanding its nuclear arsenal. According to the Korean Central News Agency on Tuesday, the ruling Workers' Party of Korea convened the second plenary meeting of the Central Committee for 3 days on June 20th to review the progress of decisions made at the 9th Party Congress in February. Presided over by leader Kim Jong-un, the meeting emphasized the regime's commitment to expanding and strengthening its nuclear forces and fully exercise its self-given status as a nuclear-armed state. Kim further ordered an increase in powerful defense assets without pause, with a goal of dominating the world, and to proceed with the construction of a 10,000-ton strategic guided missile cruiser. On foreign affairs policy, the North again labeled the South as its most hostile state and criticized this month's South Korea U.S. Nuclear Consultative Group meeting, claiming the allies are expanding their military capabilities, including through Seoul's pursuit of nuclear-powered submarines. Regarding the plenary meeting, a unification ministry official noted that an unusually large share was devoted to national defense and foreign affairs. An expert agrees, adding that while the message towards South Korea remains in line with the two-state policy, its hostility has intensified. He attributed this to the war in the Middle East.
Unlike everywhere else, North Korea feels an exceptionally high level of security threat. So the need to justify strengthening its military capabilities by pointing to external threats is growing.
Meanwhile, there was a major leadership reshuffle, with Cho Young-won elected secretary of the party's Central Committee while removing Kim Jae-ryong. The same expert explained this reshuffle is to root out corruption.
It appears that the party felt the need to strengthen its control over the military by raising early awareness of the level of corruption within the armed forces.
The meeting also highlighted coal as a strategic sector, calling for a nationwide overhaul of mining communities for broader economic development plans. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has disclosed his decision to step down from office, opening the door for the UK's seventh leader in a decade. Lee Seung-jae has more.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced Monday that he will step down, triggering a leadership contest that could make Britain's next Prime Minister its seventh in the past decade.
Every decision I've taken has been about putting the country I love first. That is why I will resign as leader of the Labour Party.
Starmer said he would remain in office until a successor is chosen, with a new leader expected to be in place before Parliament returns in September. Nominations for the leadership race will open on July 9th. The resignation comes less than 2 years after Starmer led his party to a landslide election victory, when he promised stability after years of political turmoil. In his announcement, Starmer acknowledged growing pressure from within his own party and said it had become clear that many members wanted new leadership. Attention is now turning to potential successors. Former Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham formally took his seat in the House of Commons on Monday after being sworn in as the Member of Parliament for Makerfield. Burnham confirmed he intends to run for the Labour Party leadership and position himself as a candidate to become Britain's next Prime Minister. The political shakeup also drew reaction from abroad. U.S. President Donald Trump said Starmer had hurt himself very badly through his policies on energy and immigration. Speaking at the White House on Monday, Trump criticized the British government's approach to North Sea oil development, arguing that restrictions on domestic production weakened the country's energy position.
I was critical only from the set because I think he's a lovely man, but I said you're really messing up energy. You have windmills all over the place. In the meantime, you have the North Sea oil, and they won't let anybody drill. And he's really hurt himself very, very badly.
Trump also pointed to immigration and crime as major political challenges that he said had damaged Starmer's standing with voters. Despite the criticism, Trump described Starmer as a friend and praised him personally, while maintaining that policy decisions ultimately led to his downfall. Starmer's resignation follows months of mounting political pressure, with energy policy, economic concerns, and immigration emerging as key issues in the debate over his leadership and the future direction of the British government. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Back on the local front, Starbucks stores across South Korea closed doors at 3 o'clock back on Monday afternoon for a mandatory lecture on Korean history. Our Kim Do-yeon tells us why.
3 p.m. is usually a busy period for Starbucks Korea, but on Monday, customers were asked to leave and the doors were locked. The company shut down all 2,160 locations nationwide for mandatory history training. This is one of the busiest Starbucks locations in Seoul at Gwanghwamun Square. Customers are now finding seats outside while some latecomers are turning back. This unprecedented move follows a massive boycott over a Tumblr promotion called Tank Day, which pushed down daily average card transactions by 33%. The promotion was launched on May 18th, the anniversary of the 1980 Gwangju democratization movement when a military crackdown killed hundreds of civilians. The company faced heavy criticism for the promotion, which also had phrasing reminiscent of police brutality at the time. Backlash included accusations of historical insensitivity. In response, Starbucks Korea fired its CEO, accepted unconditional gift card refunds, and ordered the closure of stores nationwide for staff to take part in company-wide training. That included video lectures on modern Korean history and social sensitivity led by history and sociology professors. The closure also means the company is forfeiting millions of dollars worth of daily revenue. But is it enough?
While the incident was unfortunate, how the company handles it is their choice. The consumer reaction is also a matter of personal freedom.
Many people around me feel closing early is just for show. My decision to keep drinking their coffee depends on the company's direction moving forward.
Despite owning no shares in the Korean chain, global Starbucks headquarters issued an apology, and major foreign outlets closely reported on the fallout, showing the extent of international attention on the incident. Experts say the training is a necessary step for structural change.
Educating employees on the May 18th movement ensures they understand the historical context, which is crucial for preventing similar issues in future marketing campaigns.
Management, including Shinsegae Group chairman Chung Yong-jin, will also take the history lesson. The company said it'll address flaws in its internal review process with a social sensitivity checklist and a verification system for all future marketing. The group will also create a fund to preserve historical sites and expand student history programs. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea is seeking to strengthen its engagement with the Global South through development diplomacy based on its own grassroots experience. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young files this report.
A new diplomatic network has launched in Seoul as Korea looks to turn its development model into a stronger bridge with the Global South. Diplomats, academics and development practitioners gathered at Yonsei University in Seoul for the inaugural meeting of the Semi-Diplomacy Group, or SDG.
Through this platform that we launched today, we can have continuous, permanent engagement through this diplomatic platform, both offline and online.
The initiative builds on Korea's Semi movement, launched in the 1970s to modernize rural communities and improve living standards outside Korea's fast-growing cities. Based on the spirit of diligence, self-help and cooperation, the movement is now widely cited as part of the grassroots foundation behind the country's rapid economic rise. More than 50 model villages have since been established across 11 nations. Officials and community leaders from more than 100 countries have also visited Korea to study the approach.
And I believe for Tanzania as well, similar movement can be adopted in our own villages, but our own communities as we are coming together. We have a 2050 vision of development. I think cooperation, diligence, and self-help are things that will help us. And
around 40% of the population of Honduras is rural. Semaurundong, it's a component that can drive change in our country. So people-driven and community-centered approach that Semaurundong develops through the capacity building in communities is one of the aspects that can be strengthened.
The initiative comes as Seoul broadens engagement with emerging economies across Africa, Asia and Latin America. Park says the model is not just about rural development, but about human foundations needed for countries to adapt and grow in a changing economy. He says those foundations include education, mindset change, leadership and civic values.
So Semaurundong has all these ingredients. So when villagers and leaders and also specialists, they learn and adapt Semaul. They can benefit in these 4 areas, and these are what is necessary in the age of AI.
Last month, President Lee Jae-myung visited the Korea's Haemaeundong Center, marking the first such visit by a progressive president. He called for a significant expansion of overseas programs as part of Korea's development cooperation efforts. The new diplomacy group aims to elevate this development approach onto the agenda of the 2028 G20 summit to be held here in Korea. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And now, as we've been reporting since last Friday, this coming July, the World Heritage Committee gathers in the Korean port city of Busan to go over the new nominations for the UNESCO Heritage List. That being said, our culture correspondent Park Geon-woo recently sat down with the head of UNESCO's Heritage Center to take a listen.
At the UNESCO headquarters in Paris, preparations are well underway for one of the organization's biggest annual gatherings. Ahead of the meeting in Busan this July, UNESCO World Heritage Director Leza Elongduo-Somo spoke about what lies ahead for the committee.
What kind of key agendas are expected to be discussed in Busan this year, and what kind of possible positive outcomes do you expect to come from that?
It will be an important moment to recognize new sites from the rest of the world and also from the Republic of Korea. Important moment to see what kind of solutions or recommendation we can see, including inscribing some sites on the list endangered, to mobilize the international communities to safeguard them.
One issue expected to draw particular attention is Korea's proposal to expand the World Heritage listing of Ketbar, the country's tidal flats. The original inscription in 2021 covered only part of the ecosystem. Leza said the extension would strengthen protection efforts while reflecting Korea's commitment to preserving biodiversity.
Not the whole territory of Ketbar is recognized. The Republic of Korea has prepared this candidature with professionalism, and the site is already known. So I do expect a very good outcome.
Another major topic on the agenda will be support for small island developing states, marking the first time the issue is formally addressed under the convention. He also highlighted Korea's growing role within UNESCO, citing the country's support for conservation projects and heritage capacity building efforts worldwide.
Agreement with the Republic of Korea, which is more than almost $4 million, with a particular focus of supporting Africa and the small island development and transboundary sites. It shows that the implication, the commitment to support the World Heritage with this agreement that we signed today is for the next years.
As climate change increasingly threatens heritage sites globally, he said cooperation with Korea will become more important than ever.
If we don't domesticate some of the policies into national policies everywhere, if we don't train the professionals to really give priority in looking how climate change is affecting each and every site, we might risk seeing many of them disappear.
For UNESCO, the Busan meeting will be more than a gathering to decide new inscriptions. It will also serve as a platform to shape how the world protects its shared heritage for future generations. Park Geon-woo, Arirang News, Paris.
Today, western regions saw typical early summer warmth. Meanwhile, Jeju Island continues to experience wet weather under the influence of rain clouds. Rain will persist on Jeju Island and along the eastern coastal areas of tomorrow, with most places expected to pick up around 5 to 10 millimeters of rainfall. Even with continued rain on Jeju, the rainy season has not officially begun there yet. Typhoon Mekala, the 7th named storm of the season, is not expected to directly affect Korea. However, it could push the stationary front northward, which may influence the timing of the onset of the rainy season. Tomorrow, ozone levels are expected to reach bad levels across Gyeonggi-do province and Incheon, so try to avoid outdoor activities if possible. And UV levels will be very high in parts of the central region, so please try to wear a sunscreen if you're heading outside. Most areas will start the day with temperatures below 20 degrees Celsius. Seoul 19 degrees, Chuncheon 15 degrees, Daegu 18 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 29 degrees, Daejeon 26 degrees, Busan 23 degrees. On Thursday, scattered showers are expected across inland areas. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
Right, those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session, so do stay with us.
He bursts into laughter upon unexpectedly discovering an incense burner on a street in Insadong. What made him laugh was none other than a replica of the Celadon incense burner with openwork geometric design, often hailed as the pinnacle of Goryeo Celadon. Its clear, luminous jade green glaze, and even the three adorable rabbits supporting the burner. At first glance, it seems quite convincing, but it cannot escape his keen eye. Perhaps, unable to support the burner, the rabbits in the replica are oversized and clumsy. In reality, the rabbits on the authentic piece are as small as the joints of an adult's finger. They have borne the weight of layered lotus petals and an openwork lid for over 1,000 years. This incense burner is also considered a masterpiece that showcases the refined and exceptional craftsmanship of the Goryeo dynasty. Each delicate petal was individually shaped and attached, and the precise openwork technique carved to allow incense smoke to rise like drifting clouds stands as clear evidence. Above all, it embodies a remarkable sense of balance that is difficult to perfectly recreate even with modern techniques. It is, in essence, a complete convergence of the decorative techniques of its time. It can be imitated, but never truly matched, the unwavering dedication of Goryeo artisans. The laughter in Insadong may well have been the most honest expression of awe for the extraordinary artistic spirit of our ancestors, so far ahead of their time.
held its first debate over the weekend.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
Boosting Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the Status UN summit. A massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
South Korean chips account for 60% of the world's memory chips, and their demand has soared in recent days amid efforts to expand AI-related infrastructure. Now, this demand in turn has, as one media put it, supercharged the local stock market and made chips the talk of the town. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Tuesday, June 23rd here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. It seems like everyone is talking about chips here in South Korea in recent days, regardless of whether you're in the corporate sector or even the academic arena. For more on this, our freelance journalist Yang Chen-hao here in the studio. Chen-hao, welcome back.
Hello, long time no see. Glad to be back here.
I also have Stephen Borwick with Japanese weekly news magazine Nikkei Asia with us. Stephen, it's great to have you here.
I'm happy to be here.
Chen-hao, let's begin with the New York Times article, a very recent article, rather entertaining, that called on its readers to try a quiz on the South Korean slang that reflects the country's chip boom. Let's start with that.
Yeah, I did the quiz too, and luckily I got all passed, all like...
How many
right?
questions were there?
Like six or seven? Yeah, with an additional one, so it's totally 7, as I remember. So it was a digital content of New York Times published 2 weeks ago with several quizzes, including many trendy issues of the chip boom phenomenon in South Korea. For example, they will ask you, what is the new word of Samsung next? Yeah, which means the combination of Samsung Electronics, Samsung Jeonja, and SK Hynix. And another question is, an investor's faith in a semiconductor stocks is wavering, and what incantation might they utter? The answer is Salmon Hammond. Yeah, so combined with Samsung Amen, Samsung and SK Hynix and Amen together. And another one is another new vocabulary, 하의치 한약수. Meaning that like medicine has originally long been seen as the most sought after career track, while engineering was once relatively dismissed. But the addition of SK Hynix and Samsung on the list of the desirable career paths signals that this might be changing. And so we have like 6 or 7 questions. And New York Times guessing game, these quizzes highlights the fact that the semiconductor-driven surge in South Korea stock prices has become a major talking point, a major issue across the country, and even attracting the worldwide attention. And South Korea produces 60% of the world's memory chips, and the global semiconductor boom has propelled the country's stock market to unprecedented heights. The benchmark of KOSPI has more than doubled in a year, adding trillions of dollars in value. And some semiconductor workers are even in line for 6-figure bonuses. The chip boom has become a nationwide obsession in South Korea, dominating conversations everywhere from family gatherings and workplace breaks to online forums, and drowning attention from around the world.
Right, indeed. Stephen, staying with what Chen-hao has just said, talk about chips, it's dominating homes, offices, and even the academic arena. I'm talking about the college campuses, of course. What have you been hearing on the ground?
First, I want to say that I got 6 out of 7 on the quiz, so Chen-hao, you beat me, which is not surprising. I've always felt like in recent years, real estate was this like massive national obsession. I mean, housing prices are still increasing quite a lot in particular areas, but it's almost, I wonder if maybe like some people have been priced out of the real estate market, and some people, because of the the new restrictions that the government put in place, like a lot of people are, as the government intended, like taking their attention away from real estate and putting it towards the stock market. I think there's a sense that there's something really unprecedented going on. I mean, like as Chen Hao just mentioned, like the KOSPI has doubled in less than a year, I think it is. I mean, like that's, there are things happening in the KOSPI that like didn't seem possible even just like a few months ago. I mean, like I remember when I attended the most recent press conference that President Lee held at the Blue House. I mean, he outlined like what his goals had been for the KOSPI and then like what had happened, which is just like far outstripped like even what you would expect from a politician, like an optimistic scenario of like, well, you know, we're going to enact these policies and it's going to have these desirable effects, and it's going to, you know, improve investor sentiment. It's going to improve the way that particularly investors outside the country view the South Korean market and view like the potential for returns. All of that has been, you know, just something that like nobody could have predicted. And so I think that it's creating this kind of, you know, positive circle. What's the negative circle? Is the, you know, Sun Soon-hwan is the word I'm looking for, Korean, like a, you know, reinforcing cycle of like, as more people get into it and as they make more money, they talk to their friends, they sit down with their colleagues, and even people who are not all that interested in investing. This, when you hear about somebody that you know who, you know, maybe is like you, doesn't have like super detailed knowledge of how the finer points of the semiconductor industry works, but the way that the KOSPI has been rising has been in a pretty simple fashion. There's like these two massive companies that are driving, because of this particular industry cycle that they're in, these two big companies that are driving a lot of sales and incredible revenue, and everybody's trying to jump on the train. The next question is just how long and how fast this train will keep chugging along.
Right, indeed. And beyond the local burst, Chen Hao, it also appears that semiconductors, they're affecting academic decisions. Could you tell us about that?
So global demand of AI continues to surge, fueling an unprecedented boom in the semiconductor industry. As a result, semiconductor specialists have become some of the most sought after professionals on the job market indeed. In South Korea, along with many countries, major tech companies are now heading directly to universities in an aggressive race to recruit top talents. Instead of aiming for medical school, many now prefer degree programs that guarantee a job at Samsung or SK Hynix or other technical companies. And it's not just those two companies. Indeed, U.S. chipmaker Micron also launched the recruitment campaigns at South Korea's major top universities late last year. And for years, universities have produced only a limited, very limited number of graduates in the electrical engineering and computer science, but indeed the explosive growth of AI and semiconductor demand has far outpaced that supply, creating the severe talent shortage. South Korea's private education industry has even coined the new term, as I just mentioned in the New York Times quiz, the 해의치 한약수, referring to SK Hynix medical school, dentistry, traditional Korean medicine, and pharmacy, and veterinary medicine, to describe the most coveted career paths among the country's highest achieving students. And according to the Korea Semiconductor Industry Association, South Korea's semiconductor workforce is projected to grow from 177,000 in 2021 to 304,000 by 2031. However, only about 5,000 new workers entered into the industry each year now. So at that pace, the country is expected to face a shortage of 54,000 semiconductor professionals by 2031.
Right, hence the interest then. Stephen, property prices in the district of Dongtan, they've also been reflecting reportedly the chip boom. Could you explain the link for us?
Well, Dongtan is located in the city of Hwaseong, which is south of Seoul in what is informally called the semiconductor belt, where there's a lot of these production facilities, particularly I believe it's the Samsung facility that's located in Dongtan. And so as Chen Hao mentioned, there are these Samsung workers in the memory chip sector that are getting these massive six-figure bonuses, and the question is, where does that money go? I mean, I'm sure some of these people will just be paying down debts. We hear a lot about Korea, and certain families or certain people have an affinity for luxury handbags or whatever it might be, but it's my impression that most Korean families, especially the Korean families that are diligent and clever enough to work in the memory chip sector, if they have a capacity for self-denial that allowed them to do all of the studying and all of the test passing that it takes to rise to the top of a profession like that, probably they're not going to just spend all this money on frivolous items. They probably don't have a lot of time off work, so they're probably not going to go traveling. So what do you do when you're in Korea and you have money and you'd like more? Well, you buy property. So this somewhat predictably is, there was a Financial Times report that created the impression that the boom is leading apartment prices in Dongtan to really go through the roof, because you have people who are trying to move there, you have people who live there, and maybe they want to upgrade, maybe they want to take like the home that they're currently occupying and have it leased out on a jeonse deal, and then use some of their cash to get a bigger or more comfortable place, or because this is Korea, a place that will allow your children to have access to a more prestigious school. So I mean, if there were a chance to do like subsequent or additional reporting on this, like I would be interested in like what are the kind of service or tertiary industries in Dongtan going to do, like what kind of services are going to spring up to serve this new moneyed elite? Are we going to see very specialized hagwons with all kinds of like, are we going to see like chip training for kindergarten children, or I don't know what it might be, but that might be just the journalist in me is thinking out loud and thinking that there's got to be some interesting opportunities for subsequent feature kind of reporting. And yeah, I think this is a good thing, because the interesting thing about these bonuses is that these are going to like ostensibly middle class people who have what you call in the field of economics a high marginal propensity to consume, just meaning that if they have additional money, they're likely to spend it and not just squirrel it away. So hopefully this can stimulate the economy as a whole, and the gains of this boom will not just be enjoyed by a small number of people, but kind of swirl around the economy a bit.
Right, for sure. Chen Hao, meanwhile, Taiwanese chipmaker TSMC has also been raking in quite a bit of revenue amid the advances in AI. How has its performance perhaps been affecting Taiwan as a whole?
Just like SK Hynix and Samsung Electronics, TSMC, as the world's largest foundry chip maker, has been one of the biggest winners of the AI boom as well. And similar to what's happening in South Korea, the electrical engineering and computer science have now overtaken medicine and law school as the most sought after majors among Taiwanese high school students. And TSMC's success has also helped drive Taiwan's stock market to record highs. Last month here, I have mentioned that Taiwan had become the world's sixth largest stock market by the market capitalization, and just 1 month later, now it has overtaken India to rank the 5th globally, while South Korea is on the 7th. And Taiwan's central bank has also raised its GDP growth forecast yesterday to 9.45%, saying that Taiwan has emerged as a key hub in the global AI supply chain, and with AI becoming the main engine of the island's economic growth. But the boom also comes with the risks and other problems, like Taiwan is becoming increasingly dependent on the semiconductor industry, and meaning that any slowdown in the sector could have an outsized impact on the broader economy. And there are also growing concerns that the industry's rapid expansions is crowding out other sectors and widening income inequality. And many like Taiwanese people are certainly pleased, happy to see the stock market soaring and the economic growth outpacing South Korea's. But if you really actually ask those people whether those numbers have translated into a noticeably better quality of life, many of them would probably say not really. Unlike South Korea, Taiwan has a smaller culture of retail stock investing. So unless you are really actively investing on stock market or ETF, many don't directly benefit from the stock market rally. And at the same time, wages in Taiwan have not kept pace with the rising cost of living. And in Taiwan, continues to struggle with high housing prices. And going forward, one of the biggest challenges for the Taiwanese government will be how to channel the wealth generated by the semiconductor industry into infrastructure, broader industrial development, and more balanced economic growth.
Right. Stephen, some of the concerns that Chen Hao has mentioned that are taking place right now in Taiwan, they've also been echoed here in South Korea, especially that with regard to excessive chip investment on the stock market. I wonder, what have you been hearing here on the ground?
The first thing I would say is just, I was reading when I was on my way here today, Yonhap reported that the KOSPI fell by 10% today, which is a pretty big dip. And so the regulators, in response to this, they activated what's called a circuit breaker, which halts all trading for, I believe it's 30 minutes. And so in this Yonhap story, this is kind of low in the piece, but I thought it was pretty amazing that this is the 4th time that they've done that this year, and we're just about halfway through this year, and the 10th time that they've done it in the KOSPI's history. And the KOSPI's been around since 1983. So that just shows you just what kind of new waters we're in and the amount of volatility that's at play here. And so one phenomenon that's coming from this is because of the widespread interest and the kind of chip stock fever that we've been talking about here today is you have cases where there are really high leveraged investors who are seeking any way to get into the market, and including in some cases borrowing, taking out loans just so that they can purchase stocks. And so that is a pretty risky scenario, because if there is a run on the market, if these gains and returns don't hold up, then they could lose their money that they've invested and be left with no way to repay whatever loans they've taken out. Will we see a run on the KOSPI? I mean, I'm not qualified to say. I think that's unlikely, but just the message that I would like to send is just that there is a great amount of volatility at play here. As we've seen, volatility is not necessarily a negative thing. Volatility is the propensity for something to change quickly. Well, the KOSPI sure has changed very, very quickly in a very positive direction. I think we can say that I should flag that a lot of those changes have been driven by regulatory changes and things that have made the KOSPI more predictable and more transparent and have raised expectations for investor returns. So will we see, how much risk is there here? Nobody can really know, but there is some. I would say that this boom is probably going to be like most booms in economic history, where a lot of people will get rich, but you will have some people who do lose out.
Right, and speaking about losing out, Chen Hao, I'd like to circle back to something that you mentioned earlier. There are, in fact, a growing number of pundits who claim that the semiconductor supercycle, it may actually widen the wage gap here in the country. Could you tell us a bit more about this?
So this is actually a very difficult challenge that both Taiwan and South Korea are now facing, because according to the statistics Korea, that the average monthly income of households in the highest income quintile rose 4.2% to a record 12.38 million won, and their monthly spending also increased 6.9%, reaching 5.57 million won. And by contrast, households in the lowest income quintile are now running in monthly deficit. On average, that they spend 1.46 million won a month, while earning only 1.17 million won. And Statistics Korea also tracks what's known as the ratio of the 5th to the 1st quintile of equivalized disposable income. And in simple terms, it measures how many times more than the richest 20% of the households earn compared with the poorest 20% like families. The higher the ratio, the greater the level of income inequality. And in the first quarter of this year, the ratio ratio rose to 6.59, up from 6.32 a year earlier, and marking the highest level since the first quarter of 2020. Back then, the figure was even higher at 6.87, but that was largely due to the economic shock caused by the pandemic. And what this suggests is that while the AI and semiconductor boom has lifted the stock market and boosted the salaries and bonuses in the tech sector in the semiconductor industry, many other industries have been left behind. And lower income households, meanwhile, continue to be squeezed by the inflation, and their incomes have barely increased, but their living costs keep raising and making everyday life even more difficult. So that's why many South Korean economists warn that income inequality could continue to worsen. Without effective policy measures, vulnerable groups are likely to face even greater hardship, and social divisions could become increasingly severe.
And with regard to the stock market action, Stephen, some believe that the rallies we've been seeing in recent times are largely fueled by the fear of missing out. What are your thoughts?
I think relevant context here is that this is a society where there's a relatively narrow path to financial stability. It's not like there's a lot of ways that a young person can plot out a career that they reasonably expect to lead to financial comfort. I mean, the customary one is really there's two. One is you're just born into a rich family, born on third base, you're fine. The other one is that you study very hard, you have a kind of academic talent, you push your way into a spot at an elite university, and then you get a stable, well-paid job in one of the professions. Maybe it's law or medicine or engineering. But not everybody succeeds on those terms. Not everybody can achieve a comfortable life in those two paths. So I think there's just a kind of surplus number of people in the society who just have not won out financially. They see it all around them. They live in a well-off city. They walk down the street and they see people driving luxury cars. They see people living in big, fancy apartments, and they think, how can I achieve that for myself? And the ongoing stock market boom, I think, is just presenting what a lot of people see as a new and exciting. Here's something that you do not need a degree from an elite university to trade on the stock market. You do not need elite connections. Doesn't matter what kind of family you were born in. This is all publicly available information. You can go on YouTube and you can read the financial press, and you can come away with a reasonably educated understanding of how the market works and where you believe the economy is going. So I think calling it fear of missing out is a fair way of putting, but I would say it's bigger than that. It's not just a fear of missing out on this particular boom. I think it's a fear of missing out on the good life, of having material comforts.
Right, indeed. But pundits say the rule of thumb, of course, is to make sure that you're not investing with money that is borrowed heavily.
Yeah, well, I'm a journalist, right. So I don't have I don't have piles of money laying around anyway.
Right. All right, Stephen, I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Chanel, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, that ends Press Perspective for today. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow.
The world is no longer connected.
We are moving in different directions. How far and fast can this actually go?
No more declarations.
We need to